Tell me about about yourself. How did some party goer and kind of a media person go into the saintly life of yoga, and how did this transformation occur?
Okay, super. Well, thanks for having me on, first of all. I can't say that I've exactly gone into the saintly life, but I've definitely gone into the life of yoga. I come from New York City. I grew up in Greenwich Village in downtown New York. And, I came from a family which is a perfectly good, supportive, healthy, happy family. But from the time I was young, I was a little bit questioning my life and searching for meaning somehow. And I wasn't finding that meaning in the regular school systems. And so I wasn't finding really what I was looking for in school. I didn't like high school or anything like that. Was not even particularly fond of education. So I drifted towards music, and I started playing music in punk rock bands, and I drifted towards art, and I thought maybe I would become an artist and that would be my expression in my life. And all of the art and all of the music kind of led me to the nightclubs and to playing in clubs and to everything that's associated with that. So it was not a very healthy lifestyle. And so in that, searching for creative expression, I kept looking in different directions. And eventually I met somebody who was doing yoga. And they started telling me about the benefits of yoga and the benefits of a vegetarian diet. And I was really intrigued by that because I wanted to improve my life. So I became a vegetarian. I didn't start yoga right away, but first I became a vegetarian. And pretty quickly I started seeing really profound changes in how I felt health-wise. I stopped eating all meat, chicken, and fish. I was eating and cooking for myself all macrobiotic diet mainly, a lot of rice and vegetables and tofu. And everything started to change. I started to go to bed earlier and wake up earlier. I started to do some meditation. Around this time I was about 19 years old or so.
Wow.
And then I found a yoga class in New York, and I went to the
Did you
class.
lose all your friends?
Yes, I pretty much started losing my friends quickly. And then, when I started doing yoga, then I started gaining new friends, and I had a whole sort of new circle of yoga friends. There were not a lot of people doing yoga back then. This was 1987, 1988 in New York City. So there were about 4 yoga schools and not a lot of people doing it. So that was that. As soon as I started doing yoga, very quickly I was hooked. And by the time I was 20, I felt like this is what I want to do with my life. So I went to India, to Kerala, and took a Shivananda teacher training. And when I came back to New York...
At 20?
I had just turned 21 when I left for India. And then I came back to New York a few months later.
And what did your parents think when you said you want to go to India and do yoga?
Yeah, they were quite concerned because they didn't know anything about where I was going. Yoga was not popular. They didn't know if I was joining a cult or something, or if I was becoming a Hare Krishna maybe. They really had no idea at all. So that was that. And back then, it was considered that if you didn't go to university and get a degree, you had no options in your life for getting a job. So they were very concerned that I wasn't going to university, but was, going this artist route. So, but I came back and they could see that I was healthy and I was happy and I loved what I was doing. And then,
so what was the India experience? What you came to India and what was that experience?
Well, the experience was fabulous. Remember, I'm from New York City and I grew up in Greenwich Village, and New York is also pretty crowded and it's definitely chaotic. New York in the 1970s and 1980s was not a clean and safe place. New York was bankrupt for some time in the 1970s, and crime was spiraling out of control, and the area where I lived was run by the mafia. So it was not an idyllic kind of very touristic place like it is now.
But considering it was 1986, there was no internet to figure out the ashram. How would you even know that this ashram existed?
Well, I mean, before the internet, we still had ways of finding out information. So, you would meet people. You would go to a yoga school, a Shivananda yoga school. They would give you information about the courses. Or my teachers who I was practicing with in New York had come to Shivananda. So word of mouth was how you found out about things. But when I got to India, I was used to chaos a little bit already. And so I didn't have culture shock. It was actually, people were very warm and very welcoming. And I never had encountered such hospitality anywhere as I had in India. So immediately we felt, welcomed, all the Westerners who came here. We felt the same way. We went to Shivananda and spent a month there doing the yoga teacher training, and then I traveled from Kerala all the way up to Kathmandu.
Wow.
By bus and by train. And then from Kathmandu back down by bus to Delhi, and then to Rajasthan, and then went home from there. So I was traveling with a friend of mine, and basically we were going to holy places and temples all through the country for every stop. And that was the itinerary that we had planned. In all those holy places, we would spend a few days, we would do yoga and meditate and do our sadhana there. And that's where the yoga lifestyle really came alive for me, in those holy places of India. So that was basically how it started, and it never stopped since then, over the past 30 years.
So how has, what is the yoga lifestyle?
Well, the yoga lifestyle is outlined in the yoga texts, like Yoga Sutra by Patanjali, and it says that there's some basic things that you should be following in yoga. The first thing are the principles of yama, which is ahimsa, asteya, satya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. It's actually ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. And these are some basic guidelines for living, how we have our interpersonal interactions with people. We should be kind, we should be honest, we shouldn't steal things, we shouldn't sexually objectify people, and we should not be greedy for the things that we don't have. So these are the basic principles for interactions. And then there's niyama, which are personal things that we should follow, and these include cleanliness and contentment, some type of daily discipline that we do, swadhyaya, which is either chanting or self-evaluation, studying to see how closely we're following along with the things that we say we're committed to. And then last is Ishvara Pranidhana, or surrender to God if you're theistic. And if you're a non-theistic person, you can still practice surrender through surrender to the unknown, or feeling that every action I do, I don't know the outcome of that action, but I'll still do it as fully as I can. So this is the foundation of spiritual life. And then the asanas and pranayama and meditation basically make your body strong and healthy, and make your nervous system balanced, so that you can focus inwardly, and also so that you can behave properly outwardly.
So there must be some interesting, memorable instances of your life with yoga. So in things which happened to you, people you met, where yoga was a key part of the whole, the reason that it happened. Are there any kind of memories of yoga that really come to your mind? 2 or 3 memories in your entire yoga career?
You mean in terms of like
people you met, or circumstances,
Okay.
or interesting incidents which you'd like to tell your grandchildren?
Oh, well, I mean, I guess I have tons of memories of yoga, and let's see. Well, I mean, in regards to people, this is something that I get asked quite a bit, because at our yoga school in New York, we've had a lot of celebrities coming through. I don't know how they found our way to us, but it's always kind of fun when they do, I'd have to say. I had been teaching for about 10 years already before Madonna walked into our yoga school for the first time. A lot of the young kids now don't even know who Madonna is, but for people of our generation, she was an important figure as a pop star. And I remember that after I told my dad that Madonna had come to class, was the first time he thought, okay, maybe this yoga thing is going to be okay, and I don't have to worry about him so much. At the time, my dad was a stockbroker, and so he was, of course, really concerned about this whole yoga thing. But as soon as
Did he think you've gone nutty?
He didn't think I'd gone nutty, but
A stockbroker's kid chanting Om?
I don't think he thought that I had gone nutty, but I think that he was concerned that it was going to be a sustainable income-producing lifestyle. But after Madonna walked into class, he thought, okay, this is probably going to maybe work out. And around those years, yoga started shifting and becoming a lot more popular in America. Up until that time, it was a very fringe sort of thing. It was still for the hippies. But around 1998, 99, 2000, when some of the celebrities started doing it, when it was getting more popular, then it really became more imbibed into the popular culture. Um, and so after she came, then other celebrities started coming as well. And people wonder, what was it like having people like that in class? And the answer is that those people got where they are because they're very, very disciplined and they're focused. You don't become successful as a musician or an artist without being super dedicated to your discipline, to the art that you're creating. So when they're in the classroom, they're focused on their yoga practice. They're there to do yoga. They're there to work. They're not there to be adored and loved by people. So they're the same as everybody else, and you have to treat them the same as everyone else.
So what is the key to having good discipline? How do you have good discipline?
Well, if you're a person who is not disciplined, the key is attainable goals. You pick off small little chunks of things that you think you can do, and then you do them little by little. So if you're a person who really struggles to exercise, don't think about exercising for an hour every day or an hour 3 times a week. Do something for 5 minutes a day and say, I'm going to do from Monday through Friday, I'm going to do 5 minutes a day in the morning before I get ready for work. Hours that we can keep forever. So the trick is to pick something small that we can do every day, so we can do it for at least a 5 to 6 week period. And then once we get there, we're going to wake up in the morning, it's going to be wired into our brain, and we're going to go, I'm ready to do my exercise or my yoga or my meditation or my prayer or whatever it might be for those 5 minutes. And then from there, if you need to, you can increase. You can go, okay, I'm going to do 7 minutes, or every other day I'm going to do 15 minutes. And then you make that your habit as well. So discipline is really choosing something that you can attain, sticking to it, wiring that habit into your brain, into your nervous system, and then it becomes part of you. And then that's who you are. And then when you want to improve yourself a little more, you choose something else that challenges you. Not too big of a challenge, just something attainable. And then you do that thing, and then you become that thing as well. So repetition is key for a new habit. It could be a simple thing also. An example I like to give quite often, because I've done this myself, is if you're someone who loses their keys all the time. You come into your house, you put your keys wherever, and then you can't find them, and then it takes you 15 minutes a day to look for your keys, and you get frustrated, and it's a big pain for everybody, including your wife or your husband, and you say, can you find my keys? And they get frustrated. So you keep a bowl next to your door, and every day when you come in, the first thing you do is you put your keys in the bowl. And after about 5 weeks of doing that, that will be your habit. You have this mechanical, physical thing of putting the keys in the bowl, which is lining up with a desire that you've created in your mind. Those two things become connected. That wires into your brain through neuroplasticity. And then every time you walk in the door, your keys will automatically go in the bowl. You'll always be able to find them. You'll save time every day, and you won't annoy everyone because you can't find your keys. So from that one simple habit of changing something, you can then begin to add habits onto it that you want to change. You can do physical things, you can do emotional things, you can do mental things, you can do social things, like maybe I want to become a better listener and stop interrupting people. And so, because that's something that a lot of people struggle with, that they don't really fully listen to people. So you develop the habit of waiting until someone has finished their sentence, and then you speak. And then after a few weeks, all of a sudden, you become a better listener.
So what is your daily routine, because you must be having a very structured routine, which a lot of people probably aspire to. What's an ideal routine, or an Eddie Stearns routine that people should aspire to, like from the time you wake up in the morning till the time you sleep? Because life is a bit complicated. It's not about just getting up and having everything peaceful, and now you as well, you run a business. A business is like any other business, which involves travel, which involves accounts, which involves lawyers, which involves marketing. So how do you manage to have a structured day?
Okay, well, I don't
with
know.
Yoga.
I don't know if my routine is something that people would want to aspire to. I get up around 3 or 3:15 every morning.
Wow.
And that's when my day gets started. I have a shower, I brush my teeth, I make a cup of tea, And I spend the first bits of the morning while I'm having tea, usually reading some spiritual books or anything that I'm studying at the time. And then by 3:45 or 4 a.m., I begin my yoga practice, and I make sure I do at least 1 hour of practice every day. If I have more time because I'm not traveling or I'm not teaching, then I'll do a little bit more. And then I spend about 20 minutes or so doing pranayama, and then I spend 20 minutes to half an hour in meditation and repetition of mantra. So basically, a minimum of 1.5 to 2 hours a day of my personal sadhana. And then when I'm teaching, the classes usually begin at 6 a.m. So I have to make sure that I get everything done by 6 a.m. So I can begin teaching. My teachings is usually from 6 in the morning until around 10 or 11 in the morning. And then after that, I have my first meal, I rest for a while, and then the rest of the day is for all the other types of work that I have to do.
So till 10 o'clock, you don't eat anything? From 3 a.m. to 10 o'clock?
Sometimes I have like a small energy bar, and that's generally what I have when I'm done with practice. I'll have an energy bar and another cup of tea.
But is that the right, should one not have food for such a lengthy period of time, or would you suggest that for everyone?
Yeah, it's difficult to suggest anything for everyone because everybody is different and has different needs. Right now, it's considered that it's intermittent fasting. It's sort of a healthy thing to do. So if you can avoid eating food for, say, a 12-hour stretch or even a 16-hour stretch, that's quite good for you on multiple levels. There's a lot of research behind the intermittent fasting right now. The yogis would have called this caloric restriction, or the restriction of food, so that you only eat within certain time periods a day. Because if you're eating too much food, you have a harder time digesting it, and the things that you don't digest become toxic in your system, and that leads to inflammatory conditions. Inflammation is responsible for about 95% of preventable diseases that we have in our society today. So inflammation is connected to cancer, it's connected to heart disease, it's connected to diabetes, it's connected to digestive disorders, and it's also connected to anxiety and depression. It's also now been shown to be connected to Alzheimer's as well. So inflammation is one of the triggers which causes these diseases to become fully penetrant, to show themselves.
What is inflammation, and what is the yoga? How does yoga help in stopping it or reversing it?
Okay.
And what should be the yoga lifestyle? Because probably even thyroid and some of these diseases also are triggered by inflammation.
Yeah, and rheumatoid arthritis and some types of epilepsy as well.
So what is the yoga lifestyle to help avoid, eradicate, and reverse? And have you had any experiences of people coming to your studio or to your exercises who have seen very strong changes in their health conditions after yoga?
Okay. Yes. So what happens with inflammation is triggered by the sympathetic nervous system. And so we have two branches of our autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and parasympathetic. The sympathetic moves us towards activity, parasympathetic moves us towards rest. Sympathetic nervous system also perceives threat in the environment. Environment could be our body. It could be bacteria or viruses. It could be when our body mistakes something that is in us for something which is dangerous, like a cell that it needs to fight off even though the cell might not be harmful. So one of the ways that the body is going to deal with bacteria or a virus or perceiving threat, maybe it could be we have a cut or we sprain an ankle or we have some type of injury, is it's going to release adrenaline and cortisol, which are going to go to that area. It's going to release anti-inflammatory biomarkers to go to that area and start fixing the area or fighting off the disease. So this is called a acute inflammation response, where there's a problem, say a cut, and then the body is going to send the white blood cells and cortisol to that area to begin to repair it. Cortisol is inflammatory on its own. It's not bad for us, it can help protect us. The problem becomes when our body senses something which is a threat and it isn't a threat, and it still continues to release the inflammatory cortisol. So for example, if we're getting stressed out repeatedly through the day, or we're continually causing a lot of injury to the body or harm to the body, or we're eating foods that the body doesn't recognize or can't digest, we'll start to create this condition where the sympathetic nervous system is responding by releasing these stress hormones into the bloodstream, and they can't get themselves out from the bloodstream quick enough. So normally cortisol is going to be absorbed back into the red blood cells, or we're going to release it through urine and sweat. But we need time for that to happen because cortisol is slow acting and takes a while to leave the system. But if we are triggering the adrenals to release it repeatedly throughout the day, our body can't get rid of it quick enough. And so then it gets stuck in our bloodstream. It goes to the brain and attaches to the receptors in the prefrontal cortex and to many other areas, and we kind of start to create a toxic condition of inflammation in the body. So one of the ways that the body deals with monitoring and controlling levels of inflammation is through the vagus nerve. And when there's too much inflammation in the body, the vagus nerve temporarily gets impaired and it can't control these levels. And it also begins to disrupt heart rate variability and other physiological processes. So the way that yoga becomes very helpful is that there are 4 basic things which will help to restore vagal tone. So if the tone is low, that means messages aren't getting sent back and forth from the body to the brain. If the vagal tone is high, then the messages are being sent, and the vagus nerve can control inflammation, it can control the messages that are going to all the visceral organs, and also receive the information coming from the organs up to the brain. So what are those 4 things that really work well? Number 1 are postures, because they're doing postures even like sitting up straight when you're meditating. You're sending messages to the baroreceptors at the carotid arteries to monitor and balance blood pressure. Okay, this is a very important part of cardiovascular health. The next thing will be breathing. Through slow rhythmic breathing, as the belly comes in and out, we're sending messages through the vagal afferents in the abdominal region up to the brain of rhythmicity, of calm, of safety, of contentment. So when there's stress or anxiety or or any hints of disease, our breathing patterns get interrupted. So if we restore a smooth, calm, intentional breathing pattern, that will send those messages up to the brain as well. And then the next thing is going to be vocalization. Pranayamas like Brahmari pranayama, where we make the humming sound, like the bee, the sound of a bee, or the Ujjayi pranayama, where we make the hissing sound in the throat. This will stimulate the vagal nerves in the throat, again toning the information flows that are passing there. And as well, chanting or singing is very good for vagal tone too. And then the last is behavior. Feelings of kindness, appreciation, and gratitude will strengthen vagal tone and heart rate variability, and anger and anxiety will interrupt. Postures are asanas, and breathing is pranayama. So the first 4 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga basically seem like they were designed in part to balance the vagal tone and strengthen vagal tone. So we have smooth communication flows between the body and the brain. And as well, when the vagus nerve is toned, we see a reduction of diseases, including cancers, certain types of cancers, certain types of diabetes, digestive problems reduce, anxiety can reduce, and that's that. So there is some research behind this that you can find on PubMed and other places. And there is, a continual amount of research that is being included. But the vagus nerve is very much a hot topic right now, and has been for the last several years because of how closely it's linked to inflammation, and how inflammation is linked to 95% of preventable diseases that we have in the world today. Preventable and non-communicative.
So is that the reason why we are seeing such a high incidence of non-communicable diseases, or NCDs as we call it in pharmaceuticals? Especially India, surprisingly, is the home of yoga, and we are also the capital of diabetes in the world. 50% of the world's diabetes patients are in India. We are also going to be the cancer capital of the world. I don't know if you're aware of that. We are also the cardiovascular capital of the world, cardiovascular disease capital of the world. So, do you see, you have seen India for a long time. Do you think that what is the problem of, is it our lifestyle, or have you seen a change in, because you've been coming since 1986, so do you see a change in the, do you see any signs of change in the food or the lifestyle, or what is the reason that we are in this disaster?
Well, I don't think I can give a reason for why there's such high rates of cardiovascular diabetes and cancer in India. Definitely all of these diseases are linked to food. The types of food we eat are going to affect the microbiome, and the microbiome is very much responsible for different types of health in the body, including cardiovascular health, digestive disorders, and moods and emotions. So eating too much sugar, eating a lot of oily foods, eating fried foods, eating foods that don't have the proper amount of nutrients in them are all going to contribute to inflammatory levels of the body. Too much sugar, definitely not good for you. Fried food, definitely not good for you. To eat more fresh vegetables and more fruits is very good for you. So in India, you also have the ancient system of Ayurveda, which has many guidelines for food and lifestyle. That's probably a good place to start looking in terms of what type of food should people be eating that is suitable for them, that will help support their health. I've also followed an Ayurvedic diet at different times in my life, and it's always been really beneficial for me.
Can you tell us a little bit about that diet?
Well, for me, because there's the Vata, Pitta, Kapha dosha, and dosha means a defect. So this is how you tend to go out of balance. I tend to go out of balance with Pitta, which is fire. I have a reddish complexion. I had red hair when I had hair. I'm a little bit fiery and active by nature. I have a lot of energy. My body is the right characteristic for Pitta, etc. So the foods that I should avoid are a lot of foods that are hot, fiery, red and orange in that spectrum, and I should eat more cooling foods that are more in the white, green, purple, blue, brown sort of region, and less tomatoes, less chili, less yellow foods as well as particular types of tea, like peppermint tea, for example, is quite good for me, while ginger tea, which is heating, isn't going to be so good for me. So you follow you learn these guidelines, you have someone who can help you, you have a lot of Ayurvedic physicians here.
Do you recommend any particular, apart from the book that you have written, which is One Simple Thing, which is a book that you're releasing in India, which I have bought and I have entirely enjoyed, because it's a very interesting book on yoga, because it interestingly doesn't probably have a single picture of a posture of yoga posture, though it's a yoga book, and it's all about healing your mind, body, and soul. And you have gone through the entire the more in-depth and structured. I don't even know how to describe it, but the more in-depth form of yoga and a mental framework for yoga. Probably before you do yoga, you need to read this book to understand what your mind should be set for. So tell us a little bit about your book, why, all the things that you have put into it. Just describe it for the listeners. And then if there are any other books that you suggest or have influenced your life.
Okay.
I know you've done a lot of work with Deepak Chopra as well. I have been seeing I have looked up your work. So he's also on similar lines. So tell us a little bit about your book to begin with, and just describe it for us. And maybe you could just hold it for the camera.
Sure. So this is the Indian edition of One Simple Thing, a new look at the science of yoga and how it can transform your life. And as you said, the introduction was written by my friend and colleague Deepak Chopra. It came out in India in October, published by Penn Macmillan. And thank you for the compliments on the book, by the way. The reason I wrote the book...
This cover is incidentally much more attractive than the Kindle cover.
Oh, well, thank you.
That's a
The
plain yellow.
plain yellow. They did a very nice job on the cover. The what I had noticed was two different things. Number one, that you could have a bunch of different people with different complaints walk into a yoga class and all come out of it feeling better. So even if one person went in with some back pain, another person went in with some anxiety, another person went in looking for meaning in life because they're on a spiritual quest, another person just needed to stretch their body, someone else wanted to relax. And you have those five people that we all go to the same yoga class, we do the same poses, we come out, we all feel better. Like that thing we went in for was being addressed. I wondered, how is this possible? And because, as you know, you run a science company and you know about the pharmaceutical world, you can't just give the same medicine to every single person who has five different people with five different diseases and expect them to get better. You target the medicine you give them. Yoga didn't seem to need that. And then another thing that I noticed was that if you grabbed 5 or 10 random people off the street and you say, do you do yoga? And they say yes. You say, how does it make you feel? They'll say, I feel less stressed and more relaxed. I have deeper connection to myself. I feel more grounded. My body feels better. I feel healthier. My digestion is better. My sleep is better. I'm more flexible. I'm stronger. And I feel an increased sense of knowing who I am. These will be the common things that everybody says. And then you say to them, what kind of yoga do you do? And one person will say, I do Ashtanga yoga, I do Iyengar yoga, I do hot yoga, I do Kundalini yoga, I do Shivananda yoga, I do integral yoga, I just chant mantras. All the different types of yogas, people will tell you that's what they do, yet they're all getting the same basic effect. So then I also started to question, how is it that no matter what kind of yoga you do, you end up feeling better with the same reported benefits? In fact, there was a study done, it was a meta-analysis by a doctor named Holger Kramer from Germany. And he did a meta-analysis on 307 different yoga studies, randomized control trials. And there were 52 different types of yoga in all of those trials. And these include things like Sudarshana Kriya, Shivananda, Ashtanga, like you name it, everything is in there. 277 of those RCTs were showing similar positive results, like the ones I just named you. So the outcome of his study, his conclusion basically was, yoga works, it has the same positive outcomes no matter what kind of yoga you do, and the reason that people will do different types is only because of two reasons, mainly two reasons. One, personal preference, and number two, availability. So whatever kind of yoga is close to you, that's what you'll end up doing, even if it's just YouTube. And the benefits you're going to get are basically the same as everybody else. So I wanted to look at what are the underlying neurophysiological mechanisms that make yoga effective. What's happening underneath the hood that makes yoga work, no matter what kind of yoga it is, and no matter what it is you seem to be looking for in your life to improve yourself. And that's what the book is basically about.
And what did you find in 2 minutes, if you could tell us a little snapshot of what you found?
A snapshot is what we talked about earlier, that the first 4 limbs of Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga are geared towards toning the vagus nerve and balancing the information flows between the body and brain. That's number 1. And that's going to affect and support homeostasis in the body as well, which is our body's innate ability to restore balance. If we support homeostasis by exercising, breathing deeply, sleeping at the right time, eating a proper diet, and in getting along with people in sort of pro-social ways through monitoring our behavior, what happens is that our homeostatic functions are supported, and if there's something wrong in the body, homeostasis knows how to repair it. But if homeostasis is not supported, then we continue to weaken our system. So all we need to do is support the mechanism in us that restores balance, and we will come back into balance. That's one of the big findings.
Awesome. So just a quick question. How long do you think a person should do yoga? What should it be? What should is it a 1 hour? Is it 1.5 hour? What do you think is the ideal time or an ideal, and how do you divide it between the asanas, the meditation, and the pranayama?
Okay. So in Ayurveda, they say it's not what you eat, but what you can digest. And the same is true with yoga. It doesn't matter how long you do it for, what type you do, as long as you can digest the practices that you're doing.
Digest, what do you mean by digest?
Absorb. You can assimilate. So if someone does, for one person, a 15-minute yoga practice, if their body is weak, it might be too much for them. Maybe they should only be doing 10 minutes. For someone who's a little bit more fit, who needs to challenge and push, 30 minutes. So a lot of it is person dependent, which is why a teacher is necessary. So you do enough every day. Here are the guidelines that you look for. Not how much that you do, but what are the outcomes and effects of the practice. We want to be building vitality, building energy through our practices. So it's good to do a little bit of movement every day. It's good to do at least a few minutes of some meditation or mindfulness practice so we can really self-evaluate and come in touch with our emotions and our mental states. That's very key. And then some pranayama can be simple breathing practices for maybe 4, 5, 6 minutes is enough. And as your system becomes stronger, up to 20 minutes is fine too. But you don't really need to put a time limit on it. What you should do is find someone who can guide you. There are a lot of yoga teachers in India, a lot of wonderful ones. And find someone who can guide you, and then make sure that the practices are making you feel better. If they're making you feel weaker or throwing you off or you can't maintain them, then it's not the right practice, or your discipline needs to be worked on. So look for the outcomes of the practices, not for what you think the structure should be.
Wow. So, Eddie, I know we could go on and on because you're an amazing person with yoga, and I'm very passionate about yoga. So we could, but I know you're pressed for time, and thank you so much for giving us this time to talk about it. You have, what are your future plans? I know you're in India for, you're doing a session on yoga. I think you're doing a few classes over here. What
Yes,
are the plans?
I'm on a little bit of a book tour for One Simple Thing. So we're in Mumbai for 4 days, and then we'll be in Calcutta for 2 days for classes and lectures, and then Patna for 1 day, Delhi for 2 days, Chennai for 1 day, Hyderabad for 2 days. And we're doing a lecture and yoga class in each of the cities in support of the book, and also in support of the great appreciation and gratitude that as Westerners we have for this amazing practice and culture that India has given to the world. So we're, my entire life really has been shaped by everything that I've learned in this country, and it's really humbling that the book.
And now we have a prime minister who you
Yes.
also mentioned in your book,
Yes.
who has promoted it very well,
Very well,
the world
very
over.
well. Yeah, very well. So it's
Mr. Modi.
it's very humbling to be here in India talking about yoga, and I walk very carefully through this country talking about it in ways that I've understood it, and not trying to preach the Hindu philosophy back to the people of this country. You already know your culture, you know your philosophy, and the findings that yoga and science have brought to us are really what I'm talking about in the book.
Okay. So thank you, Eddie, and it was a brilliant talk with you.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you for having me.